News alert story for you today. The chaos in the Middle East, more violence spreading throughout that part of the world this morning, a day after that deadly attack in Benghazi, Libya, that killed 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador to that country, Chris Stevens. The U.S. Embassy in Yemen finally secured now. This is video out of Yemen. Check that out. Yep, climbing on the embassy. Hundreds of demonstrators stormed the building earlier this morning, chanting "Death to America" as they ripped down the American flag and set it on fire. According to Yemen's embassy in Washington, there were no deaths. All of this happening while clashes continue in Egypt. Let's take a live look now out of Cairo. Protesters now filling the streets in Cairo for a second day. You can see the tear gas there. So breaking out now in Tunisia, where demonstrators burned American flags outside the U.S. Embassy. There's been speculation that these clashes are in response to that anti-Muslim movie, but intelligence officers think maybe it was all linked to the 11th anniversary of September 11th.
Right now, let's bring in Republican Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, James Inhofe. He's a member of the Senate Armed Services and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as well. That's a mouthful. And he's calling for congressional hearings over the attacks. We'll get to that in just a moment. But, Senator, in the last 48 hours, we did lose a patriot in Ambassador Chris Stevens. I know you were friendly with him. Tell us about him.
Well, yeah, not much has been said about Chris Stevens. He was recently confirmed, and I want to make sure everyone watching us now knows he's not just some political hack that was appointed by the president. He is a professional. He's had tough duty in Jerusalem, Tripoli, Damascus, Cairo, Riyadh, and all over that part of the world. So he was really quality. He was in my office just a matter of weeks ago and kind of expressed to me all the problems that were over there, and a lot of the things that he said at that time were actually going on. He was very open. So let's remember, we lost a real American hero there.
I had to bring you to this. The Deputy Prime Minister, who's somebody you probably also know over in Libya, said that, as he regrets and said all the things he's supposed to do about the loss of life and the loss of our ambassador and others, he says they warned the Americans to get out of the embassy and beef up security. Instead, we had 6 lightly armed personnel there, and even the commandos that attacked the base had a second wave because they thought the building was more fortified than it was. What have you heard about this?
Well, I've heard the same thing you have, but that's the reason that we want these hearings. That has to be resolved as to how they did or didn't respond to that. The rules of engagement. This is very, very significant. I think it's been said many times, of course, that in a consulate, like in Libya, you don't have the Marines to the same level if it's an embassy. But even if they were there, you have to understand what the rules of engagement were, because they have to answer to the commander-in-chief. So we've called for those hearings, the hearings to be both in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee to get the answer. We don't really know how Chris Stevens died.
Yep.
First reports said that there was a rocket going into a car, and then, of course, the suffocation. So these things we need to find out.
But, Senator, do you have any hope that those hearings will actually start before the election day?
Well, no, they should, and they could. Oh, you could start them tomorrow. These hearings should start. In fact, the big question, I heard Alan West earlier. He's a great person to have on, very knowledgeable. And he called for the suspension of funds going to these countries. Well, I would like to put this down and at least suspend them at this time until we have these hearings. Let's keep in mind, this is a big deal. We have 4 countries right now attacking America. When you attack an embassy, you're attacking America. And we can't sit around and wait for hearings. We need to do it right now. And that's what we've called for. And we hope to get the answers to these questions. We don't have these answers right now.
Sure.
And by the way, I have to say this. I was on your show 4 years ago, and there's no reason you remember this, when the president first went to Egypt to declare his
apology
policy
tour
of appeasement. Yeah.
We do remember that. Do you think what's happening in those 4 countries that you just mentioned and new stuff today, it's happening because of our foreign policy, whatever the heck that is over there now?
Yeah, what foreign policy? It's a policy of appeasement. And yes, it's happening as a result of that. I would never ask some of our good friends in Israel to repeat publicly what they talked to us about, some privately. But, they say, why is it for the first time since independence back in the 40s, we have a president who's trashing Israel, our only friend there. So this thing is huge, and we've mentioned 4 countries. Let me tell you, it's not going to stop there. There is war against America throughout the entire region. They're attacking us now.
Many Americans are upset that the millions of dollars continues to be funneled into these nations. I remember having this discussion last year about Pakistan as well, after they arrested people there who helped to get Osama bin Laden. Let's take a look at the numbers to see how much money we're actually giving to these countries. Libya in 2011, $163.5 million. Egypt in 2012, $1.6 billion. There it is right there. All right, let's listen to the president on whether or not we should continue that foreign aid.
Yeah, well,
the United States doesn't have an option of withdrawing from the world, and we're the one indispensable nation. Countries all around the world look to us for leadership, even countries where sometimes you experience protests, and so it's important for us to stay engaged.
We already did suspend aid to Pakistan for a while, and that is a reward. It's not, we don't just give it away. Do you think we should reconsider the billions that we're giving Egypt, second only to Israel and the countries we support?
Well, you got to keep in mind there is a responsibility of the host nation to provide security. Clearly, that wasn't done. And I think, yes, I think rather than just say you cut it off, you suspend it until we get the answers to the 3 big questions that we don't know out there. And we can do this. We can do this very, very soon. But you've got to get their attention. We know that this pacifism doesn't work. We know that the policy has been a disaster over there. And we even said this 4 years ago on your program, that we can expect the policy of appeasement doesn't work in the Middle East.
Right. And here's the thing. We're in the finals organizing a $1 billion package to ease the rising debt burden of this Muslim Brotherhood, this Morsi government. We should stop that today, at the very least, and re-examine until this hearings get started. Don't you agree?
Yeah, you have to do that. Suspend it. I'd use that word, suspend, because we need to have answers that we don't have right now. Today. You're right.
Senator, before you go, got to ask you, yesterday we were talking about how the Cairo embassy had sent out that apology to the protesters. And some have been spinning it as well. That's just one person who wasn't speaking on behalf of the White House. We've had some guests on today who said, look, it had to come from Washington. No. Who's running the show? Who's running foreign policy? Who's running things?
The one thing I can guarantee you is that the White House saw that. They approved the statement that went out, and that sounds exactly like the words that none other than the President Obama would use. And that has been his policy now for 4 years. It's a failed policy. It doesn't work. And this is our opportunity to change that policy. Let's wait and see what he does.
You would think if they have the name and they have the process, that guy would at least be fired today or sent home to explain himself. So far, he's on duty, not even reprimanded, reportedly. So we'll find out if there's more to that story. Senator Inhofe, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet.
Coming up next on Fox and Friends, we toppled Gaddafi, and now our ambassador to Libya, murdered, assassinated. So did the U.S. really do enough after last year's Arab Spring to prevent this chaos? Juan Williams and Andrea Tanteros here to debate that next.
Today's West.